you tend to hear hook and you're like, oh, I got to say, like, here's the only way that you can grow your biceps.
Yeah. If you're not doing these 3 exercises, your arms are going to look like shit.
POV, you fixed your cortisol face. No.
From the top rope. That was excellent. Welcome to the Coach 'em Up podcast. I'm Tim Riley. Zach Zillner's not with us today. He is in Miami opening a coffee shop. In his place, I am super grateful to introduce you guys to TATUM BRANDT. TATUM, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Tim.
I'm happy to have you. So I'm going to brag about you a little bit before I ask you to introduce yourself.
Well, that's why I'm here. I love this.
Yes. So I started following you, I guess it wasn't that long ago. It was probably just a few months ago now.
Yeah, I think so.
And your page has continued to grow. Your content is absolutely incredible. Most pieces of content you put out, I watched and I'm like, that was actually something that can help me grow.
Oh, that's amazing. That's all I want. Yeah.
And you're a total badass because you came to Texas to run an ultra. It was the BPN event.
It was the Last Man Standing event.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
she was sick, by the way, and decided to run it anyway. Tell us about the event.
I mean, that was my mistake. I got here, I had a fever. I think I got whatever summer flu has been going around.
Yeah, my daughter had it.
Yes. And I think that's where I went wrong is I was hanging out with people who had kids.
Yeah.
And, you know.
That was your first mistake.
That was my first mistake.
It's not a matter of if, it's when you're going to get got.
Yes.
The kids do it.
Yes. So, but then I went and got an IV on Friday and thought, I am magically healed. I feel
100%.
amazing. And then Saturday I started running, and props to the people who were out there much longer than I was. I lasted 5 hours and it was everything I had, and then came back and just crashed in bed for like an entire day.
Yeah, it turns out I'm still ill.
Turns out I went on a 2-mile run yesterday and I was like, I'm probably fine. I probably just phoned it in. Nope. I'm still a little sick.
Yes.
But I mean, the event was absolutely incredible. The people on the course were just encouraging each other and motivating each other because it was so brutally hot. I don't know how you guys function here in Texas.
You adjust. You adjust to a degree. With my ginger complexity, I never actually adjust. You know what I mean? Like I literally have an internal timer where I know just innately, it's like, oh, it's been 4 minutes and I've been in this sun unprotected.
The sun is so intense.
It is, dude. It plays 0 games down here.
Most of the people running the race were in like long sleeve tees and they had the silly little hats with like the little, bandanas, but you had to do it in order to survive. And the race ended up going for 2 days. There's 2 runners left that were running, and it got called off by that massive storm.
That's what did it.
That's what did it. And so they were still going. I think they were on mile 220 something.
Oh my God.
The record for these backyard ultras, I think it's something like 400 miles, 400 miles. I think these guys would have kept going. If the storm hadn't stopped
I saw a clip.
So
the content from that event has been pretty. By the way, I guess shout out BPN. Free plug right now. Usually no free shout outs. Free shout out right now. But I saw a clip, and I guess they were at about 200 miles or something like that. And the clip was just like a price has been paid, and they're like, and like they're like taking the shoe off, and this dude's fucking feet were mangled, bro. All his toenails were dead.
Oh yeah.
All of them. Blisters all over his feet.
Toenails.
And they like took it off. They like put some like antiseptic on it, and then they just put the sock back on, and someone in the background goes, just get it back on and you just gotta keep running. And he was like, okay. I'm thinking, dude.
I know.
What the fuck?
These are animals, which the cool thing about BPN is it's really popularizing this like thing that's been around. Ultra running has been a thing, and backyard ultras have been a thing.
Sure.
But it's so niche.
It is.
And so now this entire new community, I talked to several people who are running the race who had just been doing high roxes before or CrossFit, and they jumped in and did 50 miles and fell in love with the sport, which is kind of cool.
It is cool.
I think that's cool.
It's very cool. They're doing some special stuff. Speaking of people who are doing special stuff, TATUM.
Oh my gosh.
I know who you are. We've had a chance to chit chat prior to the podcast. I've been following you for some time. Maybe not everyone knows who you are. For the people who don't, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you ended up here with me.
Yeah. So my name is TATUM BRANDT. I have a brand studio, BRANDT Creative. And so we specialize in brand strategy and identity through execution for mostly the fitness and wellness industry. I've been doing it since 2017, which if you've been in the fitness industry since like 2015, 2017, I mean, you've seen massive changes. So that's been super fun. Originally, I worked with a lot of coaches. That's kind of where I got started. And then now we're working with larger teams and larger brands, and still with coaches because that's my first love, really. And then I started creating content around brand strategy and like the fitness industry as a whole because it's been really interesting watching it explode. And that content has really taken off, which is how we met each other, is through good old Instagram.
What is your Instagram handle real quick? Let's plug you because I want to brag about it.
Okay. TATUM BRANDT. That's TATUM BRANDT.
So, and when did you start that Instagram page?
That was started July of last year.
Dude, it's exploded. Growth, it has. I think you're at like mid 50s, mid 50,000 followers or something that. But looking at your page, I mean, and again, I know I said this before, so sorry to be repetitive, but every piece of content is intentional, and it has key takeaways or key observations and stuff. And like the way you're doing it, like other people do content style similar,
right?
But you're doing it better. So I'm not really surprised that it's done so well.
And the cool thing is, this is a topic that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours, and I'm deeply interested in it. And so the fact other people are too, I'm like, great, this is something I could talk about for days. And I think that's kind of the key there.
Well, so to your point, and we'll just call it fitness, and under the fitness and health umbrella, trainers, coaches, performance coaches, having a social media presence has at the very least become a minimum standard for having some sort of resume. A lot of people look to that more so, right or wrong, than degrees or education at times.
Yes.
It's like, who have you worked with? What have you done? What is your presence? And what can you bring to my company, business, team? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's also why I started creating some content too, is the traditional way, like straight out of school studying advertising and graphic design. Used to, it was pay to play. You enter to win some awards. There's just this career progression that just got, when TikTok and Instagram became what it is, all of a sudden it's, oh, do you have a social media following? Now you can come speak at our conference.
Right.
Now you can judge this award panel, maybe even if you're not qualified 100%. To do it. And so I thought, well, I think I'm qualified to do it. I better start creating content, which is wild. And I think it's the same for fitness industry pros. You could be the most qualified, but if you don't position it in a way that sticks on the internet, oh my God, like it's difficult to crack it.
You just spoke to something. I actually just got chills listening to you say that. I'm not even kidding, because I remember being in this place of feeling like I kind of was like I was good at my job, dude. Yeah. I cared. I'd put in all the hours and mentorships and seminars and continued education to like get to this place. But I was stuck in what I was talking to you about off air, the trainer trap, right? Yeah. Where I had worked myself into this place where I was finally making like enough money to not be just like broke. You know what I mean?
Right.
But definitely like not enough money. And I'm working my fingers to the fucking bone. And I'm opening up my Instagram, and it's like, I know I should be posting, but I'm kind of resentful at the fact that I should be posting because I don't want to, because I'm fucking tired. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do it. I don't really know what to do. I don't really have an identity. And then I'm opening up my page, and I'm seeing other trainers and coaches who, in my opinion, are totally underqualified, don't have the same level of expertise as maybe I do, but they have huge, massive followings. And frankly, they're financially secure.
Oh, yeah, they are.
And I'm thinking to myself, what the, and then I'm on the sideline hating, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But then it dawned on me, I had the fortune of having a close friend, David Gray. I watched him grow his platform from 3,000 followers to I think he's at 300,000 followers now. Wow. But in addition to that, he was able to scale and have programs and have a big impact. And now he gets to travel the globe teaching seminars. But the catalyst for that was the growth.
Yeah.
And the building of his brand.
Yes.
And doing a good job, right? So anyway, I say all that to say, I watched that and then it dawned on me, I was like, oh my God, like, is this person who maybe isn't as qualified, who isn't as knowledgeable, who may be entirely misinformed, but is having success, are they the idiot or am I?
Yeah.
You know? Because I'm just sitting here, I'm sitting on my hands and just complaining.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had a similar experience where you're like, I gotta start doing the thing.
And you kind of have to, I mean, when it comes to social, which we can dig into brand and social and how those play 100%. Together. But I mean, you really just have to like look at it. I look at it as a creative practice.
Yeah.
Let's be proud of every single thing we put into the world, because God forbid you put out something you're less proud of, and that's the video that's going to go viral and you're going to get ripped to shreds.
100%.
Oh my God. And then, you know, if it's more of a creative practice and experimentation, then it can be a way to just kind of play around. And I think you produce better work that way. Mm-hmm. But man, it's hard to visualize it like that when you are working, you know, over 40 hours a week, all hours of the day, and you just have no bandwidth to pour into this platform that you're already resentful of.
I think, yeah. I think also too, and this, I want to talk less and have you be the star of the show. I've been talking too much so far. I'm just excited to have you here.
No, I love it.
So I think I'll take myself back to where I started. I'm like standing on the precipice of making this like jump where I start trying to build what I didn't know at the time was my brand, right? Or what would eventually become my brand. And then from that place, being able to create content around the identity that I had formed, and then build an online business, and then leverage that into this podcast and now the conference. But I did it by blindly feeling my way through the dark and just seeing what sticks. Yeah. My hope for this podcast is the conversations that we're going to be able to have is going to be able to accelerate that for others.
Yes.
So my first question, and I think we should start here, is define brand. Because that word gets thrown around all the fucking time and it feels nebulous.
And it is nebulous to some extent. I mean, we were talking off air, but there's a lot of, I think, business coach brand gurus who work with especially the fitness industry that are going to take you through the same basic exercises and define something as brand strategy that's just the most basic thing that you could do. And the basics are good, but what I always say is brand isn't what you say you are, but it's who everyone else says that you are. So you already have a brand, whether it's been intentionally crafted or not. And where I like to work with people is say, let's intentionally craft the presence that you have, you know, in other people's lives, from your business to yourself as a person. And what that often encapsulates is logo, colors, fonts, the visual identity portion. There's also a verbal identity. What's your tone of voice? What's your personality? How do you show up on different platforms? And how do you speak? And then there's also foundational brand strategy. What's your position in the market? What, you know, how are you different than your competitors? How do people find you and interact with you? And who are your ideal clients? Those are the basics that I think a lot of people focus on when it comes to brand, but it tends to be boiled down to who is your ideal audience and, you know, what is your logo and color palette? Totally. So you just see, you know, poorly done Canva graphics, which, hey, we've all been there.
Listen, we may or may not have a glorified Canva product as our logo currently, you know what I mean?
And you got to start there, which we'll talk about. But, you know, and then you get like a phrase that you put in your Instagram bio, like I help 45-year-old women lose 45 pounds in 45 weeks or something.
Yeah.
Just god awful like that, which you need to be able to communicate what you do in a sentence.
Yes.
But people don't buy from brands because you're the best, you're the most qualified, you get the best results anymore. All of those things matter. But they buy from brands because it's like a form of their identity. You participate with brands because it reflects back an identity. I'm putting the sticker on my water bottle. I buy from Nike because I'm this type of person. I work with Tim Riley because I'm the type of person who would hire Tim Riley. And so I think that's where that brand strategy and personality crafting, a lot of people get it. Just, you don't take it far enough. You got to see it through that lens.
When it comes to identifying, okay, what are the answers to these questions? Where do you feel like most trainers and coaches get that wrong?
I think we all tend to be narcissistic. I say that as myself. And we love to go through these like personality exercises and what is my vibe and what are my core values, which is good. You need to have an understanding of who you are as a person. But I think the real good stuff is found in looking at your customer journey pre-awareness of you and even of a problem. So thinking back to when you're working with a client, what is the catalyst that's keeping them up at night, that's causing them to start searching for a solution, and being able to kind of plug some of your messaging and branding back around that experience by, we always use this framework called the 3 E's. It's, empathize, educate, and envision. So you want to empathize with their struggle. Like, hey, I completely understand that you are experiencing this exact thing. So they say, oh my God, you get it. I'm here. And then you want to educate them on, here's how we can help you move to this other place that you really want. Move out of this pain that you're experiencing and move into this thing that you want. And then I think a lot of people stop there. You might just be in the educate, like, I will help you lose 45 pounds in 45 weeks, something ridiculous. Right. But then you want to move into that envision portion. Like, what is the dream reality that this person wants? Help paint that picture. Because if they're stuck in that pain that they're experiencing and that they're, searching for a solution, they might not even be picturing what life could look like on the other side. Like, hey, don't cycle through diets. You can just live your best life and eat healthy and feel great and play with your kids. Have the strength to play with your kids or whatever that thing is. And paint that dream picture. And I think that's where all of the good stuff with messaging, tone of voice, and even some visual identity really starts to pull out when you start to focus on your ideal client in that way.
When you were talking about the 3 E's, I couldn't help but think, I was like, God, that sounds like an entire content strategy to me.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't know anywhere else to start, building content pillars around those 3 E's feel like an easy layup.
It really is, and getting creative with it in, if we're thinking like empathize, educate, envision, what's a way that you can do that with some humor? Because often, empathizing with somebody's problem, I think, especially within the fitness industry, we get way too serious with it. And you need to wake up and get out of bed. And that works for some people if you are Jocko or David Goggins.
Right.
But so many people, they're living their daily lives and they kind of want to laugh about the struggle that they have.
100%.
Lean into that. Like whatever, when we talk about crafting a brand personality, that's the stickiness that you can start to establish where people say, oh yeah, I fuck with you. Like I want to be a part of this world.
How much emphasis do you place on authenticity and like who, because when we're talking about all of the considerations that you're, and frankly, the toolkit that you're laying out for myself and the listeners, tone of voice, the content pillars themselves, like what we're speaking to, I think it can be easy for people to craft this almost like caricature of themselves. That like sort of meets the ideal of what they think all of these things are, which I'm sure can work, you know what I mean? But in your experience, like, is being authentic the foundation for success with all this stuff? Or where does that fit into the puzzle?
I mean, that's such a good question because when you're working with a personal brand, it is so difficult to craft a personal brand because we as people are dynamic and we have so many contradictory traits.
Yeah.
So I think painting a caricature of yourself in some ways is good if it is authentic to the person that you are, because you kind of have to start defining it. for all brands, you've got to get things out of your brain and on paper to start defining who you are, who you aren't, and how you show up, because you're constantly evolving and changing as a person. And you're going to see trends and things, people who take off on social that you might want to jump on, but you got to go back to your kind of North Stars and say, is this the type of person that I am? So I think authenticity is such a buzzword.
It is.
But the key is to find what are the things that I can lean into with my personality that really already resonate with my ideal client.
Yeah.
So kind of finding the balance of, here's the person that I am. People may not give a shit about the type of person you are, but how does that interact with who they are in the way that you interact with them? What are people like? Oh, me too. I love mac and cheese, and you eat that every single day. Or like the really stupid things that start to stick and work on social. And this is kind of a term that you may have heard in marketing called world building. You want to craft this world with your brand personality that people can drop into and say, okay, I'm here. I know where I am. This feels like my best friend, not because you're sharing every personal aspect of your life, but you've intentionally crafted, certain things that you constantly hit on. Because it is a strategy, not in, a salesy or clickbaity way.
Right.
But you have to strategically craft, okay, here's the personality that I'm showing up with in how I help people.
We were talking earlier about the phenomenon of like, in the fitness space, trends, the ebb and flow of like what the current conversation is or isn't. I feel like a lot of people who have quick success are people who can capitalize on those ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And there are people who it's already like it's just right place, right time, where it was like already a part of who they were. It was something that they were already taking very seriously or whatever the case may be. And they had done enough work to be enough of an authority figure so that when the pendulum swung in their direction, they were there and they were able to make the most out of that. On the other end, there are people who seem to just be predatory in their approach, where it's just like it appears that is the strategy, where it's like, oh, this is the topic of conversation. Oh, the carnivore diet's a new thing. Me too. And, whatever the case is. The unfortunate truth is that both can work really well.
Oh, they can.
I think as someone who I like to believe that, I'm not someone who has ever, hopped on a trend or a fad diet or anything like that just to capital, right? Mm-hmm. I think most people consider themselves to not be someone who would position themselves in that way just for, followers or financial gain. But I think there's this like delusion or this lie that's like, I think people tell themselves, well, that shouldn't work or it shouldn't be okay. And it's like, well, it works.
Oh, it does.
It really works.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, so
it's tempting.
I'm going to give you some kind of game to how you can lean into what works about that, but in a way that doesn't feel like you're selling your soul.
Okay.
This is where when I'm working with brands to build brand personality, it has to be very intentional. Mm-hmm. And we use a lot of very cheesy frameworks to do it that are so classic in marketing. One of them is, have you seen kind of the chaos alignment chart that's used in Dungeons and Dragons? So you might have seen it in a meme. It's essentially like a chart that has lawful good, chaotic good, neutral good, and then chaotic evil, neutral evil, and then neutrals in the middle.
Okay.
So I think it's used in the game of Dungeons and Dragons to establish how a character moves throughout the game and makes decisions, which I think is perfect for you as a person or you as a brand moving throughout the world and making decisions.
Okay.
So essentially,
big shout out Dungeons and Dragons right now.
Shout out Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry.
What we like to do is say, okay, where do you fall on this chart? Now, depending on how advanced your brand is, you might have a few different, places that you lean into. But if we look at, let's say, Pit Viper or Liquid Death, the classics that you always hear talked about in marketing, they are full chaotic evil. If you go on the Pit Viper website, there's an option to, if your cart is empty, say, add a bunch of shit to my cart, and it'll add $200 worth of stuff to your cart. And then if you're on their website and then you go back to social, their retargeting campaigns that you get with is, hey, I'm inside your house, like buy sunglasses right now, which is perfect. Like, don't you love that?
Totally. That's totally on brand. Dude, that's brilliant.
It's brilliant, and people love it.
The people who identify with that brand, they're like, that's fucking funny to me.
Exactly. But who can't do that is, let's say, AG1.
Right. Yeah. AG1 cannot do that.
If AG1 was saying,
I know you're in the shower. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Buy your AG1. Yeah.
So, and AG1 is trying to position themselves as, hey, we are clinically research backed.
Right.
We are the thing that you need every morning. Throw all of your other supplements away.
Right.
And they show up in, I would say, a very lawful good space. A lot of mental health companies like Open, breathwork and meditation, very lawful good. We're here for the good of others. And then I would say, like, maybe a Lane Norton or somebody might show up in lawful evil. Like, hey, we're going to call you out and stitch your video.
Right.
Here's why you're wrong, but this is lawful.
Yes.
And so you can use this framework really tongue in cheek, but this will kind of help you establish, especially on social where things tend to be a lot more two-dimensional.
Totally.
What is the tone of voice you're showing up with so that when a trend rolls through, you can really make the decision of, is this something that makes sense for me to hop onto? If I'm AG1 and I see like a crazy trend going around, I'm probably not going to hop on it because that's going to dilute my brand and not really do anything for me, even if the video goes viral. So that's a framework that I would start with, and where a lot of the people who are like trend jacking and trying to get attention with, like, I'm anti, feminism and I eat no plants,
right.
Or something just absurd.
Right.
They're leaning into this, kind of maybe like a lawful evil and trying to kind of spark some controversy.
Right.
How can you do that,
right.
but in a very authentic way?
Yeah, a less tasteless way.
Exactly.
So then that begs the question, and I know this from my own experience, but the power of knowing not when to engage is probably just as important of knowing when to push on the gas pedal in that regard, right?
Yes.
But that only comes from having a sense of where you fall along that spectrum and kind of sticking to your guns.
You have to. Like, double down once you know. And I will say, people are dynamic. So let's say you're a lawful good. That's where I like to introduce a thing that is so cheesy, but brand archetypes. I don't know if you've seen the brand archetype wheel that has outlaw, hero. It's essentially a wheel based on 12 human values and desires. So like pursuing connection, exploring spirituality. And then you have these offshoots off of it. So for the explorer archetype, you've got brands like Jeep. Then there's like the rebel or the outlaw archetype where you have brands like Harley Davidson. And so you can start to see there's the lover archetype, which is like Chanel and, chocolates. And so you start to see brands fall into these. And I think it can be really reductive to say, I am the hero archetype like Nike. We're pursuing mastery. But what I like to do is, hey, let's pick 3. What's the primary, secondary, and tertiary brand archetype? And literally, if you Google it, there's a million quizzes that will help you identify your brand archetype. You can read a description like a BuzzFeed personality quiz.
You know what's funny? I'm realizing as you speak, first of all, you're taking me to school right now.
This is good.
I don't know any of this shit.
It's classic marketing stuff that, why would you know? This is what people are doing at ad agencies for the last 2 decades that often doesn't really work. You got to apply it the right way. But
before I jumped in, you said you're like, okay, we're going to take 3. And then how do you blend those, or do you make those just kind of like that becomes like you're going to put all 3 on a graph and then where you fall in the middle kind of thing, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is where, for my astrology girlies, I like to say this is like your sun, moon, and rising sign. Okay. Like these are your brand archetypes. And if you're not into astrology, just, bear with me here. But what I like to say, let's say, you're the hero archetype, which is in pursuit of mastery. brands like Nike, a lot of sport brands, most of my fitness brands are like, yep, we're in pursuit of mastery. Maybe you're also, secondarily the magician archetype, like a Disney or an entertainment brand, because like we are creating the life that we want to create. We're building a world here. And then maybe your tertiary archetype is the jester. Like, hey, we have fun here. Like the humor is infused in everything we do. Like this is a huge part of who we are, but we're not leading with that, like the brand M&M's, where every single commercial is
like silly and goofy.
Is silly and goofy.
Right.
So what I like to say with all of those three, that kind of starts to build a like structure for your personality, especially when you pair it with this like chaos alignment chart. And you can say, okay, now we know how to craft our tone of voice based on these things. The tertiary archetype of humor, we're not going to use that all the time, but we're going to bake it in like the last sentence of our email. We're going to throw a GIF in. We're going to, bake in some of those elements. And what I also like to say is, hey, you can build brand campaigns off the back of a singular archetype. So let's say, the magician archetype. Let's build a summer campaign of create, like my friend Alyssa Olenek is doing full send summer. Go create the life that you want, full send, pursue, because you have the fitness to go do this.
Hell yeah. Shout out Alyssa.
Shout out Alyssa. And that is the perfect example of, okay, this might not be your primary archetype, but lean into it for a seasonal campaign. Black Friday, you're fighting with everyone who's dropping a sale to like,
of course,
the holidays are coming, like stay in the gym, please keep buying my program. Like try to craft a world around that and lean into a different personality that's still yours, but it's like a subtle, side of who you are. And I think that's really the magic when it comes to crafting a personality. We tend to go really one-dimensional because it's often easier to apply. But if you give yourself a framework and some guardrails that add some dimensionality, then you can really lean into those in really fun and unique ways.
Zach, what's the best training app on the planet?
It has to be Train Heroic. Gone are the days of sending the old crusty PDF. Now we have a sleek new app.
It's easy to use. There's videos with descriptions. You get to track and log your weight, your reps. There's a community chat function. You can submit videos. You can get feedback.
How about the leaderboard, Tim?
I started using Train Heroic first as an athlete and someone who wanted to learn. Now I use it as a coach. Athletes and other coaches can go and be a part of my training community and get results.
Whether you're an athlete, coach, or just like to train, use the link in our description to find out how you can train on the best app in the world.
And join us on Train Heroic today. The Coach 'em Up podcast has partnered with Eleiko.
Let's go!
Not only is Eleiko found in 85% of Power 5 schools, but they also offer at-home solutions from racks, flooring, rigs, barbells, bumper plates, your favorite accessories like straps and weightlifting belts. You name it, Eleiko's got you covered. Go to eleiko.com/coachemup and get access to the same equipment that they're using in the best facilities with the best athletes on the planet.
And now, back to the show.
So if someone's listening to this and they're saying to themselves, okay, like all of that's really good information. Give me some action items.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like what are 3 things that I can do to start right now? Like they listen, they finish this podcast and subscribe. And then they say, okay, like that was really inspiring. I'm going to start taking these 3 steps. What are those things going to be to helping them develop and craft that personality? Yep. Or identify, maybe is a better word.
Okay. The first one, this is so unsexy, but just write it down. Get it on paper or digital paper and get it in front of you because you might think that you know it and it exists inside of your brain. But I say just write it down so that these are your North Stars that you revisit anytime you're trying to decide, do I jump on the social media trend or I have no creative bandwidth. What am I going to do for our summer campaign?
God, that's it. That's a big one for
if you have it written down, you might think that you have all of these ideas, but when you're completely zapped at the end of the day having client check-in calls,
right?
Go back to the document that you created. So I would start there. Look up the chaos chart, look up, your brand archetypes, and start to write down the core things like your story, your core values, what you stand for, how you differentiate yourself in the market. Like against your competitors, What are you doing differently? Why should people work with you instead of them? And then start to kind of run it through your personality and craft some tone of voice. And so I say just get a big document where you write it down. That's where I would start. The second thing is start to get creative and riff off of that document and just brain dump. What are campaigns that can live off the back of my tertiary brand archetype? How could that show up? Because if you take time for some creative brain work there, then that saves you when you're trying to say, Black Friday is coming. The new year is coming. What am I going to do for this? I'm, drowning in the sea of what's happening on social media. How do I stand out? Or even better, for your core clients, how can I create something and better serve the people that I already work with instead of just getting new people? Like, how can I give them a little something that's fun, gamified, or leans into the type of, person that they've come to fall in love with? I think that was just two, but I think two.
But listen.
Start there and then go execute. Then actually, so I will say, okay, here's the third thing. It's so easy to get stuck in just analysis paralysis and think that you're doing the work because you're just thinking about doing the work.
Hold on, time out, real pause. Because what you just said is so important. Being stressed out and having anxiety about doing what you need to do is in fact not actually doing what you need to do. Continue.
I needed to hear that too. This is
listen, I do it.
Story of there's emails just in my inbox that I'm stressed about that I just haven't responded to. If that's you, yes. I will respond to you today. No, but I mean, what my friends in tech always say is get it to market fast and iterate faster. So this is kind of a tech saying where you can guess all day about how a user is going to interact with your app. But really what you got to do, the best tech brands that actually succeed is they put it out there and they say, oh, here's all this data of what people don't like about this. Now we're going to go fix it. Now we're going to go fix it. You're going to grow so much faster if you can get it to market fast and then iterate faster.
And then be nimble.
Get real-time data and say, oh, interesting. This was inauthentic to me. Okay, we're going to pivot. We're going to do something different. And I think that's how, start testing things against your core clientele and then a broader audience. And you'll start to figure out real quick what works and what doesn't.
So when it comes to, all right, so we have this idea about what we need to do to start identifying and just building the foundation of who we are, what's our brand, and the action steps necessary to start making that happen. Let's take it the next step further, which is, I'm just throwing stuff here on the podcast. No big deal. And scaling that thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's this highly individual component because it's okay, what does growth mean to you as the individual? So if it's okay,
sure.
Can I just give what can I give you a proposed scenario here, a case study, if you will,
yes.
Which I think will probably do a decent job of encapsulating where most people in my space either already are or want to be.
Okay.
Most people would like to be able to grow their platform large enough so that they can have an impact. Also, too, to get out of that trainer trap or that strength coach trap and be able to, frankly, sell products online so that they can grow financially outside of the four walls that they're standing in all day long, eating rotisserie chicken with their bare hands in between clients because they have no other options.
It's so real.
I've done it. Many. For those, if you know, the rotists don't miss. So creating a product, right? Launching that product, scaling the business, but doing it all in brand alignment. Yeah. I know that's a lot, but where do people start? What are some considerations? What are if it's you in that situation? What are the things TATUM BRANDT's thinking about?
Okay, how early phase are we starting with creating your product?
Yeah, let's say we've got the product in mind.
Yep. Yeah.
We're at 2,500 followers, and we're okay, I need to get this thing launched.
Yeah.
What has to happen next?
This is where there's so much nuance in building your business. So from a brand enters the picture and should always be in the picture, but the way that you grow and what's going to work for you is going to be different for different individuals. Mm-hmm. what I typically say when I work with smaller coaches is first, do an audit of what is currently working for you and double down on what's working. So if all of your clientele or all of your leads are coming from referrals, okay, fantastic. Let's build out a system to incentivize referrals and lean into that even more. Love on our clients to make sure like, okay, we are guaranteeing a referral to come off the back of this. And then look at that next, okay, now what's top of funnel? How do I get more people into my ecosystem in a way that's authentic to me? I think a good example, if I'm looking at my business personally, is I worked with a business coach at one point, as we all do, who said, yeah, LinkedIn is where you need to be. You're going to post thought leadership content on LinkedIn and you're going to get more business than you can handle. And if you've been on LinkedIn consuming that kind of content, it works for some people. And with me, with fitness, my people were living on Instagram.
Right.
That's where all of them were.
Yeah. And so the effort was there.
Yep.
Wrong space.
And it felt very inauthentic for me to put out thought leadership content on LinkedIn. It wasn't a format that I felt like really resonated with me based on my personality. And so I think finding where your people are showing up and then just, here I am, I'm going to show up here. And thinking about back to the original kind of client journey and the pain points that they're struggling with, start trying to craft messaging and marketing materials catered specifically to those pain points. So an example is one of my clients is trying to shorten her sales cycle. So she has like, hey, my programming or my coaching is $90 a month, which isn't cheap for a lot of people.
No, it's not.
For like, templated programming, not one-on-one coaching.
Right.
And so she's looking at, hey, man, people have been following me and in my ecosystem for 2 years before they finally pull the trigger and say, let's do this. I'm going to jump on. And so she found through all of her client inquiry forms, all of the reasons why people had waited. Okay, man, I'm working night shift. I want to be able to run my first ultra marathon, but I have no idea how to train. I'm waiting for that magical right time. And so by looking at and analyzing that, we're able to start kind of uncovering, okay, here's some stories that we can pull out and start launching some social media at. And maybe let's take a testimonial of a nurse who's working the night shift who just trained for her first ultra marathon and pull that in and create like, now this is, a fall campaign that we're talking about. Let's highlight this person. Let's talk about their story. And man, I wish I had started sooner.
God, I was just about to say, when you said it, I was like, oh my God, what a brilliant way to start creating content around your products or whatever it is you intend to try and maximize on your social platforms.
Yes.
Asking people.
Ask people. Look back at all of your intake forms, and if you don't have intake forms and surveys, create them. Get as much data as you possibly can, and then start creating things off the back of that.
Doesn't Google have a survey system? What's the easiest? Let's say,
that's a good question.
You know what I mean? Like if someone wanted to set up a survey that they could send out to people asking for a friend who have already purchased their program, right? Yes. What did you like? What didn't you like? Yep. Why did you wait to start? What are the things you would change about the program? What are the things that you love the most? Yes. And maybe actually let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start there. What kind of questions are you asking in a survey like this? Why are you asking them? And then do you have any plugs on where we could create something like that easily?
Yes, we could talk about software all day because I've worked with all of it. So we can talk about that. When it comes to the questions, the first thing you want to do is evaluate what is the goal that you want to get out of running this survey. Like what is the primary thing that you want to get out of it? Maybe it's just that net promoter score. Will people recommend you to a friend? Hey, maybe that's it. And it's a 1-question survey and you just want mass amount of responses. Or maybe it's, hey, how long did you wait until, did you follow me? Did you wait until you bought? What was keeping you from buying? Or exit surveys. Why are you leaving? That's a perfect, and you want to, as far as the amount of questions and what type of questions, those need to fluctuate with how in-depth, what's the goal of that survey.
Got it.
So an example is I worked with one person who was rebranding their training app, and they had so much brand, equity and love. Like, there are people loved the brand and we're elevating it, but what we don't want to do is change the elements of the brand that people really, really love. So we put out a massive survey to evaluate what do you think of when you think of the brand? Mm-hmm. What colors come to mind? When you see a post in your feed that you know to be this brand, like, what do you see? And that survey was massive because the diehard fans are actually going to fill that out, and that's all we wanted. But if you're trying to get like a volume game, keep it short and as easy to answer as possible. Because what is really difficult is getting people to fill out
to actually do the survey.
To actually do the surveys.
Just to do it.
And this is where, software is a limitation. So if you're working with like a third-party app platform like an Everfit or a Trainerize, they might not have baked in some kind of survey to say, hey, as soon as you're, filling out the app, where did you come from? How did you find us? Little things that I wish some of these apps that I've been emailing some of these apps, like, hey, can you just make this an option? That would be great. Or even exit surveys. But I think you can integrate that with, I like Typeform. I think it's really easy to use. If you have, you can use Google too. If you have the Google Business Suite, that's pretty easy. And integrate that in some of your emails. If you have onboarding sequences or offboarding sequences, inject those as often as possible. Or if you have your training plugged into an app like Everfit, make it one of the steps. Like, hey, here's your onboarding workout sequence. Okay, you're gonna watch this video about how to use the app. The next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna fill out this short survey, and it's a to-do list. Because the one thing about people who typically love to work out is they love to check off that to-do list.
Oh yeah.
So you can kind of find ways to tap into people's psychology and say, please fill out this survey. And, we're going to make it super easy for you to do it. And you're going to love checking off this bubble. You don't want that notification bubble.
So it feels like your best friend is going to be, you're on that precipice. It's going to be collecting as much information as possible so that it's almost like you'd rather sharpen the axe and cut once than go hacking your way, which is frankly what I did, right?
You want to do both. You want to be sharpening your axe as you're hacking away.
Let's freaking go.
as you're hacking and you say, oh, interesting. This is really this tree is really, this analogy is going nowhere, but it's okay. This tree is going nowhere. We need to sharpen. We're going to go over here. We're going to hack more over here.
Yes.
So I think that's especially with how quickly social is moving and how difficult it is to stay culturally relevant as a brand. And we all need money. You don't want to wait all day
100%.
To make the money. So you kind of have to be trying things out and then saying, okay, let's take a bunch of data in from that trial. What did we learn? Let's go execute over here based on what we know. And I think what a lot of people think with brands that are really succeeding or social media that's really succeeding is that they know they're super dialed. They have the strategy dialed. And typically it's they've tried a bunch of things and they found one thing that worked and then they doubled down on it.
You literally just took my next question, by the way. Yeah. The question being, maybe we can just dig into this a little deeper. In clients you've worked with, and just as you sit back and watch the landscape of the fitness space at large, what do you feel like are the consistent themes of brands who are continually successful or stand out to you the most? And you say to yourself, no wonder they're doing so well.
So one example, I wonder if I can give this example. If you look at the app Ladder, the training app Ladder.
God, it's so good.
They have just hit the scene and it felt like, oh, they came out of nowhere when, we all know, no, you were working for years before you finally exploded.
100%.
And I think what's interesting, there's a lot of other apps that might hit the scene with the same explosive energy, but if they never iterate off of it and try something new, you can just... It's the classic BlackBerry to Apple example. If you never innovate on the thing that you created and you just expect that to ride you into the sunset, somebody else is going to come in and do the exact same thing you're doing.
Yep, but maybe better.
Do it maybe better, maybe not. Maybe just a little bit different, a little more culturally relevant. And so it's easy to get, again, resentful to be like, no, I figured this out 2 years ago. But you have to keep iterating. And I think that's what the people at Ladder are doing really well is they're trying a ton of new stuff. They're throwing out campaigns. They're seeing what's working. And they're asking their clients like, hey, we're going to build a really good product. What's the next thing that we're going to build? And so I think the brands that stick with it have tried a lot of stuff, found the lucky thing that worked, and then doubled down on it really quickly, and are continuing to try new stuff because you have to double down on what's working and realize this algorithm isn't going to be in my favor forever. We got to be able to pivot, and we're actively trying new things to figure out like a new market.
How much is just I guess what I'm hearing when you're saying that is just consistent effort.
Yeah.
It never ends.
It never ends. And that's where you really have to, and I think you'll resonate with this, you really have to love what you do.
100%.
And you got to be in it for the impact and for the people that you're helping. That's why I love working with fitness brands. If I wanted to make money, I'd go off and be in the pocket of a private equity firm and say, just hand me brands. And I've worked with one of those brands and was like, this is soulless. I made a lot of money, but...
Yeah, you were miserable.
We're miserable over here. And it's so fun working with these fitness startups with absolutely no money. And I'm like, here's what we can do for you. Because I believe in this thing that you believe in and you're so passionate. And you kind of got to have that passion. And fortunately, the good thing is once the ball gets rolling, if we're talking marketing on social, it starts to be a little more frictionless and you can have a little more fun because you have people that are loyal to you. Yeah. So when you try new creative things, even if it doesn't have the conversion rate that you wanted, hopefully if you're staying aligned with your brand personality and tone, your people are going to go crazy for it. And if nothing else, it's a little extra something just for your people that they say, oh my gosh, we love interacting with this brand because look at what they just did.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
It feels like it's impossible to have, to discuss building a brand, growing a brand, nurturing a brand, continually reinvesting and exploring what that brand currently is and needs to be to continue to thrive without discussing the impact of social media and navigating that space. It feels synonymous to me, honestly. Yeah. But I think what would be cool is if we talked about some of the lessons you've learned about growing your own social page.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
I want to know when you started, because here's the deal. I think I would rather, there's an analogy. It's like, would you rather have, if you're going to have open heart surgery, would you rather have someone who just graduated med school, who's done 0 surgeries? Or would you rather hear from someone with no medical degree but 10,000 surgeries under the belt? Give me the guy. Give me the guy without the degree, right?
Yeah.
So you may have been navigating social media for less than a year, right? But the impact that you've had was more than I had working my ass off for 3.5. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
You've also had front row seats working with your clients, advising them, informing them as to what works, what doesn't, as it pertains to their own individual brands. So the scope and breadth of your experience here, in light of the amount of time it's taking you to have success, is worth its weight in gold. So take us through the story of okay, I know I need to start taking social more seriously. I know that it's important. What were your first considerations? What was your plan of action? And what have you learned along the way?
Okay, that's a great question. And it's so funny because I'm still in that mindset of I work with all of these brands that are so successful. I have a degree. I have a fine arts degree in graphic design, damn it. And I studied advertising and user experience design. I have so much. And man, some of these people who are cranking out videos about, making logos are getting all the business. What is this? And I'm sure coaches can relate to this too.
There are at least 10 strength coaches with PhDs who just almost threw their phone across the room listening to you say that because there are so many highly fucking qualified coaches who are working away tirelessly, almost thanklessly.
Oh, yeah.
And getting under fucking paid. And they watch some fucking schmuck who just has great abs, right? who decides to post every day and they are driving a Lamborghini in South Beach. You know what I mean? Zach's probably riding front seat. Anyway, Zach, our co-host, just moved to Miami.
Perfect location for the social media.
Literally,
Maverick.
I'm saying, I think maybe Miami's going to be our ace in the hole. So anyway, there's going to be a lot of resonance with what you just said.
And that's where, too, I mean, I kind of came to the point where I was like, well, then you grow the social media following a little bit and have some success. And you see, like, I see some of my clients start listening to me a bit more, start getting more work. And you're like, come on, I've been saying this. I've been saying all the same things. Nothing's changed. But the thing is, you can either, like, hate the player or hate the game. Like, I jump in on the game and say, okay, this is, for me, it was figuring out how do I grow on social in a way that isn't selling my soul. Because originally, early days on Instagram, like 2020 and TikTok, I was looking at the like pointing at the screen kind of content.
Oh
like,
God, I forgot about that.
This is what your brand should be. And I was like, I can't. You know what? Maybe I'm going to be broke my whole life, and that's okay. Like I can't. This is going to sacrifice my reputation. I'm an artist. I can't do this. And so, but then it was seeing certain creators show up in a way that was not overly produced, but it just had a little bit of polish. And I started seeing people come on and say, okay, we're going to talk about this topic. We're going to break this down. That now we see just a million green screen creators and it feels a dime a dozen. But at the time I saw one and I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do.
Yep.
And I already had a thing that like, I have an opinion. I got something I can say. Mm-hmm. And okay, now all these things that I'm talking about with some of my friends or some of my clients in like voice memos that I'm clocking, what if we just start pitching these out? And another strategic decision was, when people hire me or work with me, they're working with a team of designers that like I'm creative directing too. So I don't want to just say, here's a logo, a video of me designing a logo, because I might not be designing your logo. I've got a designer who's better than me for that. Mm-hmm. I want people to hire me for strategy. So I think for other coaches, figuring out like what's the thing that can like resonate and stick. And unfortunately for me, it was how do I deliver this really valuable, interesting information? Sometimes it's not even valuable, it's just interesting in a format that gets people to stick around. Because sometimes I have videos that are, a minute 30, 2 minutes that do really, really well.
That's impressive. Which, especially on Instagram.
It's hard to do, but it's because the content is good, which most people have good content, but it's what is the opening sequence to get people to stick around. And, I worked with some marketing bros who were just, hey, here's what you do. Like, here's the little way that you can kind of crack this. Mm-hmm. And once you figure it out, you can kind of lean into those tactics and tools. So, it's having
what's been a successful formula for you with that?
For me, it's a combination of hooks, which I think everyone sees on social media. And I think it's very difficult for people in the fitness industry because you tend to hear hook and you're like, oh, I got to say like, here's the only way that you can grow your biceps.
Yeah. If you're not doing these 3 exercises, your arms are going to look like shit.
POV, you fixed your cortisol face. Like, no.
From the top rope. That was excellent. Well done.
Yes. Like, so this is where figuring out like what is the thing that's going to get people to stop. And I see this with podcasts all the time. Sometimes to get to the meat of the conversation, you have to have the context up front. Mm-hmm. You can't kick it off like from the really viral hook moment. Mm-hmm. So how do you get people to stay until that moment? What really helps is just having a title on screen, positioning what you're talking about, what the thrust of the video is, so people can kind of, self-eliminate and say, oh, I am interested in learning about like what Peloton's brand strategy. Okay, that could go viral for a very specific demographic of people, but if the preamble is just me talking like this and there's no context.
Right. They're not going to hang around long enough to even see what you say next.
Exactly. And the other thing is there's the hook that is the verbal hook. There's the visual hook that is the title. Mm-hmm. And then there's that, they call it the Pope in the pool method. But like, can you be doing something interesting so that people stick around? It's when you see people chopping vegetables or like even if I'm starting this clip and I'm like unscrewing my water bottle, this is going to perform better than me talking to the camera.
Because they want to see you finishing the task.
Exactly. Or just like you're walking outside,
right?
Like casually talking to your phone. It's probably going to do better than you setting
up and just having the camera front, like literally just like this.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Which for me, like often the topics I'm talking about have a visual component. So I'm like, let's talk about Bandit Running's latest, campaign.
And then you can have B-roll of.
And then I can have B-roll of the thing in the background. So you're watching the B-roll, you're hearing the interesting content, and you know what you're about to watch because you have the title on the screen. That's it.
Yeah.
Like that's all it is. You got to provide some context and give people do the psychological hacking in a way that isn't, tasteless.
Right.
Like, oh, how can we be doing something to kind of like tap into? Sometimes for certain creators, they're like, oh, I know if I go to Paris, there's this place where I can buy a giant croissant. I can start the video by eating that giant croissant and be like, here's why carb stacking is going to be like,
right. This is why carb cycling is dope.
There it is. You got the fitness terminology. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be about the thing that you're doing, but if you get people to stop, they might stick around, and then more people. I think the way that I like to think about it, because it's easy to grow resentful of social, is more people now can hear the information that you want them to hear. You can help more people if you can figure out how to deliver that information. And that's all it is.
The Coach 'em Up podcast is sponsored by Squat Wedgies. Tim, what are Squat Wedgies?
Squat Wedgies are an adjustable squat wedge, 7, 13, and 20 degrees.
It's big enough to elevate your whole foot and not just your heel.
Because it's rubber, it doesn't slide on surfaces.
It's 22 pounds, so it's durable and stable enough for even your biggest athletes.
There's a 90-day risk-free trial. The shipping is free, and
get 15% off Squat Wedgies with our discount code CoachEmUp15.
Coach 'em Up 15 for 15% off of the best squat wedge on the planet. The Coach 'em Up podcast is now powered by Vald, the global leader in human measurement technologies. Whether you're working with elite athletes, Gen Pop, or return to play populations, Vald's tools are designed to give you objective, actionable data to help drive your decision making. From Nord boards, force decks, and smart speed timing gates, all which I use, Vald helps you measure what actually matters. Their technology is used and trusted by the NBA, NFL, EPL, and NCAA, as well as thousands of high-performance clinics and facilities around the world. If you're serious about performance, recovery, or precision coaching, Vald gives you the best tools to test, assess, and improve. Because remember, if you're not testing, you're just guessing. Follow the link below to learn more and request a demo. Speaking, the resentment, but this is an important conversation, and it is the truth. Whether I want to accept it or not, this has been the fact of my experience, is that growing a larger social platform has given my opinion more validity.
Doesn't that suck?
It is so shitty. It does suck, dude.
Yeah.
I used to watch it and I would be like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But because he has followers, people think he does.
Yeah.
And then now I'm in a position where I'm like, oh, that guy answered my DM because I have, 100,000 followers and a blue check next to my name.
Exactly.
And I bet he doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And to that point, I get more clients now. Mm-hmm. I have an NFL offseason here in Austin. A lot of my clients come from guys who are in the league, will see one of their buddies training with me and just DM me and be like, what up, bro? Yep. Can I come and train in Austin for 2 weeks? I'm like, bet. And that does not happen if I'm not doing this other part. And I think it's hard to reconcile. It is one of those things, if you focus too much on that, but that's I've heard resentment, and since that's the topic of this, I guess now, is...
TATUM BRANDT is on the pod to talk about
resentment and social media.
I'm so bitter.
But resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies.
Yeah.
And... you can look at it one of two ways. You can say you can have all the feelings you need to feel about navigating social media or you can choose to, not participate, and that's fine too. But once I got around to the fact that this is going to make an impact if I just stick with it, and then I started getting the results, some of that resentment did.
Well, and here's the other thing to help mitigate resentment, because there are people with giant social media followings who have no idea how to monetize it. And their people are following them, but they're not loyal. So like who you are as a person, the type of content you're delivering, and the type of business you've built does matter. Like that's going to give you the longevity that you want in the industry. And then just the gas on that fire is going to be social media. So I think sometimes it's easier for me to reframe and be like, okay, I've been doing this for years, but this is even better. Now that I'm popping up on social, I don't have to fail as much in public. Like, I kind of know what I'm talking about here.
Right.
And like people are smart. They sniff that out and they know. So they might be following somebody else, but they might work with you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then the other way that I kind of look at it as, this is me as a creative, but I think all entrepreneurs are very deeply creative. I think it's a part of the practice, but looking at creating social as a creative practice and saying, how can I put something out that I'm genuinely proud of, and how can I reposition this really like dense topic in a very interesting way? Like let's play, let's have some fun. And that's helped me kind of overcome some of that like resentment or bitterness or just burnout.
100%, because the burnout is so real too.
It's so real. And, sometimes I get very nihilistic, I like to go, backpacking or be outside or run races. And when you come away from something so incredible where you're interacting with the earth, you just come back and you say, why am I on TikTok?
100%.
Why am I on Instagram? This doesn't mean anything. And so it kind of helps to treat it as like, you know what? Nope, we're going to treat this as a daily creative practice. We're going to throw stuff out there. And then at the end of the day, now I'm getting to work with more people who I've wanted to work with. This is opening doors that I've dreamed of it opening. And this is the new game.
Apart from the stark reality that more people listen to you more and start taking you more seriously in light of all your legitimate experience and degrees, now that you have a social platform, what are some of the other lessons you've learned about navigating the space and maybe even yourself? Yeah,
I think a key lesson too is when social blows up, like all the work that you did before that it lays the groundwork for what you're about to experience, because it is so rapid and so quick. So I'm constantly falling back on, I've done this before. I have this experience. I know who I am in this way, that this isn't freaking me out when I get trolls in the comments because a video went viral. Because I know the information. I know who I am. And I think the other thing that I've been actually struggling to learn is, okay, now all of this social media attention is great, but all the things that I tell my clients about, build an email list, get people onto like something that is yours, something where you can continue to serve them, is something that I've launched a Substack quickly and just said, okay, here we go. So I think figuring out the basics of how do we bring people into our world off of these platforms is still like, email, SMS, and your website feel antiquated, but are all still like, that vital. Is how brands are making money, is in email and SMS. And it is something that you have to pay attention to. And even like a great example, a lot of brand agencies are now getting leads and clientele through AI searches, ChatGPT. So but the way that you're found through like a ChatGPT loves to recommend like niche experts. So, I am the brand studio for B2B SaaS or for fitness and wellness. So, but the way that you stand out for that is through like Google and SEO and domain authority. And that is a long fucking game. And so the sooner you start with that, like don't ignore the basics. Like you need that top of funnel from social and from TikTok. I know brand experts have been saying this for years, but it can't be the only thing. You've got to get people into some kind of ecosystem, not, for the reason of if Instagram disappears tomorrow, right? Which is valid, but that's like a played out and unlikely. Yeah. But just like, oh, now you have an even deeper audience and a deeper niche that you can then say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try out this challenge. Who wants to join? We're going to toss it to the email list. Like you can get people in from Instagram. Like I think it's important to kind of own your audience in that way. And that's something I've been exploring. Like, how do I provide more value in a deeper way outside of these 90-second videos? And what does that kind of next step look like so I can build more of our studio's ecosystem?
Looks like me and you are at the same place then.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot to navigate too. I think even with all your experience, does it feel overwhelming at times?
Oh my God, all the time.
All the time, constantly.
Constantly.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I had a realization the other day. I was like, you know, I've felt to some degree overwhelmed for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
But I'm still here.
Yep.
And I'm still doing well. And then I had the realization, I was like, wait a minute. Maybe that's just how this goes. Like, that's just it. Like
I think that's entrepreneurship in general.
You're just constantly pushing your boundary a little bit.
And that's life too. Even if you're working a 9 to 5, you have you don't want to grow on social.
Fuck no.
Anytime
I don't want to do it.
No. Anytime you show up for like, I'm going to train for this race. I'm going to accomplish this athletic, endeavor, or I'm going to push myself and, grow my friend group in this new city. Like everything is overwhelming. And if you're growing and developing as a person, it's a constant barrage of like new and challenging things. And I think the way that it shows up as an entrepreneur is marketing and social media and time management and losing sleep and finances and all of those struggles, which really suck. Like it's going to be the exact same experiences, just different.
Totally. Man, I can't believe we're already approaching the end of this podcast. This time is flying by.
It is flying by.
I want to make sure I'm gonna check some of my bullet points here and make sure that there's anything we don't leave before we get to segments. Okay. Let me see. Don't worry, we'll make sure. Ben, you're gonna edit this out so that we're not with a bunch of dead space.
No, this is what people came to see.
That's right. Yeah, just like
You know what is interesting is often when like large brand studios or advertising campaigns will go live with like Ladder had their Severance campaign, the videos that always perform better are the behind the scenes videos. Here's how I shot this. And I'm interested, what the thought exercise that I'm constantly doing is, okay, I'm looking at these brand giants that are seeing these things kind of come to life. How can smaller brands tap into some of that? And what does that look like for smaller brands? So I'd like to see coaches kind of tap into some behind the scenes because that stuff always works with like large brand content. So I think showing some of the behind the scenes, not the like, here's my unfiltered life, I'm going to show you everything. But I think sometimes that can establish a little bit of like, oh, you're a real person. This is interesting. I kind of want to see the way you have your camera set up.
Dude, I literally have a post in my drafts right now of me coaching a hinge with one of my athletes, and I didn't mean to record it. I just had the camera recording, but it's us just interacting and like me, and then like he gets smoked. And it's me laughing in his face because it's like the first time he ever felt it. And I had this moment, I was like, my God, I need to post more of this.
Yeah.
This is super easy on my end, but it's authentic. It could not be more authentic.
Yes. Yep. And people clock that. They love it. They love to see you didn't know that you were recording. Like those videos always do well. And even just showing like, hey, here's how I grabbed this really excellent shot. Or I think within fitness, like here's, the breakdown of this specific thing. Oh, like I tripped setting up, the squat, rack or whatever. I think those things always perform.
Yeah. I should I wish I had a camera around me all the time. I could just do a compilation of me blasting my shins on different pieces of equipment.
That's the next era of being an influencer is you just have a cameraman following you everywhere. You're walking into Sweet Green and it's just 100% camera in your face.
Yeah. I feel like also YouTube is going to be.
Okay. I was going to say, I think YouTube, I don't know if you're familiar with Austin Current. He's an incredible strength coach who wrote The Science of Strength Training. It's a book that sold in like every language that exists. You should.
I think I do know who he is.
There's no way you don't.
Yeah.
Everyone in the industry knows. Obviously. Okay. But he talks about YouTube. The people who come from YouTube versus the people who come from Instagram or TikTok or X are always just so loyal and bought in. Like even if your YouTube following is so small, it's kind of almost like an email list in that like that's where I think a huge opportunity on social is. Like one of my goals this year is to get on YouTube, mostly because I'm so wordy. You are too?
Yeah,
it's the perfect platform. I can barely condense myself to 90 seconds. Like let's throw it up in 30 minutes. And you get like, people start to get to know you like on a podcast.
Yes.
And YouTube has its own algorithm that's so interesting. When, if somebody watches the video and watches it through or likes it, it's going to show that video to more people who match their demographic. So the more diverse demographics you can get watching your video, it's going to blast it out to other algorithms that more closely mirror like their own. It's really interesting. So I think it's a really fun way to kind of grow.
I realized I did have one more before we get to segments. Okay. So content styles or strategies that you would recommend to someone in the fitness space right now?
I feel like I'm so ill-equipped to talk about this, I'll be honest, because it changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
A content style or strategy that's working for you right now might not work in 6 months. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's try a little bit of everything. I went through like a social media kind of boot camp, essentially, that was like, hey, you're going to try every single one of these formats and figure out what sticks. And I tried the green screen format and that video went viral. Yeah. And I was like, oh,
there it is.
There it is. We're going to double down on it. But soon like people are going to be like overwhelmed by green screen and it's going to shift to something else.
I think the green screen burnout's already starting to happen.
It is starting to happen. And so I'm going to have to figure something else out pretty quickly.
Well, there'll be another thing, though.
There will be another thing. So when it comes to content styles, I think the most important thing is to just look at your marketing basics, like top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. Create stuff that's has the capacity to go viral. So for me, if I'm talking about a very specific or niche brand exercise, what I want to do is position it in context of like, hey, here's how Hailey Bieber is doing this with Road Beauty. Mm-hmm. Or like, hey, and all of a sudden it drops it into a very gen pop, like trending like context that people are like, oh, now I'm in. When you're talking about a very niche kind of brand strategy. And so the same can be said for fitness. How can you like put it in a context or attach it to like a story that's kind of in the cultural zeitgeist to make it make sense? So that's very top of the funnel. Or I see a lot of, coaches leaning into memes or like POV, like try some of that shit. Like it might work and give you some momentum to then go create the really dense stuff that your loyal following really wants. Because it might not, get you new followers, but they're going to stalk you when they come to your page and kind of scroll through, like carousel posts are ripping again. Yes. So like, okay, how can we show, here's everything you wanted to know about creatine. Dense carousel post.
Boom.
I even saw a reel that went viral for here's the only video you'll ever want to watch about creatine, and again, that puts things in context and positions it in a way that, okay, now we can watch it. And so I think more than format, it's figuring out how to contextualize things for people so they want to stick around.
Amazing. We've come up on time. We're going to hit some segments now.
Okay.
Man, we ripped through that. Okay. So, Tatum, this first segment is brought to you by Squat Wedgies. Use code CoachEmUp15 at checkout for 15% off all Squat Wedgies products. And they're the best squat wedges I've ever used. I've got them all in my gym. Oh, nice. So, Tatum, what are 3 actions, ideas, principles, philosophies, considerations, 3 things someone should start doing to go from zero? Let's say they're brandless. Okay. 3 things they need to do to start building their brand.
Okay. 3 things. I'm going to keep this really condensed.
Okay.
The first thing is strategy. Figure out who your audience is and who you are in the market and where your audience is showing up. The second thing is personality. Figure out your tone of voice, your specific, your tone of voice, your core values, your story, and how that plays into the strategy. And then the third thing is like execution. Like, okay, here's the logo, here's the visuals, here's the like, how can we polish the edges? And then typically I say for brands, start internally and work your way externally. Start rolling out the brand things that you're playing with in your email signatures with your clients. Like, start there so that the experience when someone comes to work with you is like, oh, all the way down, to just emailing you or talking to you is all the same experience. And then as you start to roll it out with your clientele, then they'll give you live feedback because they really know you about like, oh, interesting. I really think hot pink isn't, your color, Tim. Like, this is an interesting choice. And so you'll start to learn some things. So that's what I would say is strategy, personality, and then just go execute.
Incredible. This next segment is Rant and Rave. This is brought to you by Train Heroic. I use Train Heroic. Zach uses Train Heroic. You can click the link in the show notes.
Shout out Josh.
Big shout out Josh.
I met him in Miami, Heroic. Of all places.
Really?
Yes.
Josh, he's incredible. Huge friend of the show. We love Josh around here. He's the fucking man. So Josh, there's your individual shout out. Josh from Train Heroic. Okay, Rant and Rave. So give us a rant. Something that you're seeing in the fitness branding space that you're like, gross. I don't love this and I wish it would go away. And then we're going to bring it around full circle and you're going to give us a rave. Something that you're seeing, a trend that you're like, I love this and I want to see more of it.
Okay. There's so much that you can rant about. Yes. So I'm going to try to choose my rant wisely.
Okay.
I think something that I think we're all clocking now that I just really despise are predatory business coaches and gurus within fitness. There are so many fitness coaches that I have worked with who are like, man, we'd love to like build a website that's actually going to convert for us and get our True Coach app branded. But I mean, we're spending, $15K a month with this business coach that's just telling us to like focus on our ideal client. Some business coaches are great, but there's so many like gurus who I think are very predatory in fitness and will tell you maybe deliver like a playbook that they use to help themselves grow, but it doesn't necessarily translate to you. It doesn't acknowledge whatever privilege they kind of hit the scene with, whatever luck, they hit the scene with. And I hate that. I really hate that. Like, there's a lot of principles you can learn on your own through trial and error and through like working with very specific experts where you don't have to spend $15K a month. And so that's my rant. That needs to be stopped. I think we're clocking it more now.
I think so.
The gurus. Some of the gurus know some things. A lot of them don't.
A lot of them don't. A lot of them don't. Honestly, for them, maybe it's just an example of really good marketing working out for them.
That's true. And a very specific angle, that worked specifically for them. Like, can you replicate that? I don't know. I think my rave is there's a lot more, hate it or not, on TikTok and Instagram, there's a lot more authentic content. Like, we are past the era of like very highly produced quote graphics, like just going viral,
right?
Where you have to have everything, like your grid. Your grid used to be everything. Like, I did so much work, and like, let's give you some Canva templates for your social media.
Totally, and people would like post in a way where like one entire strip
I forgot about that.
Of their grid would be quotes. People still do that. There's still people in the fitness industry. It's like, every third post is a carousel or every third, and it's, there's like continuity across the grid.
Sometimes that's nice. Like, sometimes that's nice to see an audiences like it. But what I really have been loving is coaches and people in fitness who have leaned into just like the native platform settings and are producing like beautifully not highly produced content. That's creative and fresh. And it just feels like you jumped on here and you're like taking advantage of like the platform tools and settings, but it still feels so aligned with their brand voice. Like, it's this refreshing, like anti-brand kind of movement that I think it's a lot more strategic than people think. You know what I mean? But I love that, like,
to be anti-brand is a brand.
It is. Oh my God. And it is way more work to be anti-brand than it is to be super branded. And I love that. you have to be so curated and so intentional with the way that like, the just rolled out of bed kind of like makeup and hair look but like, for brand. I think it's so fun.
Okay. If you didn't have your own business, if you weren't in marketing, if you weren't doing this profession, what would you do and why?
That's a really good question. I think I would do something involving travel and nature and be kind of like a tour guide, somewhere. I have so many friends that I went to high school with are all working at ranches out in like Wyoming now. Damn. And they have no Instagram presence. They're way cooler than I am. And I cringe every time I post because I'm like, please don't see this. Yes. Hopefully you're just like fly fishing in Wyoming right now. I think that's what I would be doing. I'd be
fly fishing in Wyoming.
I'd be guiding somebody doing something, probably taking them in the wrong direction on, a trail, but we'd be having some fun.
That's awesome. Very cool. Okay, this last segment is called Solicited Advice. This is brought to you by Eleiko. There's a link in the show notes and an important message for everyone who's made it for this far on the show. Use code CoachEmUp10 at checkout because you'll get 10% off everything site-wide for freaking Eleiko.
I'm going to use that code.
Literally.
I'm geeking over some of your sponsors. Eleiko's elite.
That's what I'm saying.
That's crazy.
I say it, but I'm like kind of jokingly, but like not. I can't believe they sponsored this podcast.
No, that's amazing.
It is amazing. We're so spoiled. Thank you so much, Eleiko. We love you. Please, God, sponsor us forever. Okay, so unsolicited, use code CoachEmUp10. You have to use the code for it to work. For the love of God, people. Okay, so solicited advice. Okay, you're heading back to the hotel. You're going to get into the elevator. Someone's already on the elevator, and it's like that weird, awkward silence thing. And like you go to push the button, they go to push the button at the same time. You're like, and you guys get it figured out. You're like, sorry, yeah, okay, Dead silence. Then suddenly, you feel compelled, convicted. You just have to share this one sliver of advice with this person.
Oh, no.
It can be about anything. Okay. It can be life. It can be about fitness. It can be about marketing. There is something, when you walk off this elevator and leave them standing there, you've left them with this piece of advice. What is it?
Oh, no. This is triggering my fight or flight from being like an evangelical Christian kid where it's like,
no way!
You feel called to share the gospel in this elevator.
Oh, my fucking God, you were?
Yeah, were you?
Oh, let's talk about our religious trauma after this podcast ends. We should have just started with this.
So many exercises. This is where I feel like I'm pretty good at networking now because I had to go up and share the gospel with strangers. You know what I mean?
Saving people's lives.
Saving people's lives. So saving people's lives with brand. I think... Oh, God, one piece of it. This is going to be so cheesy, and I'm going to want you to edit this out. But I genuinely think that brands that really work are so deeply true to who they are in an interesting and unique way. And I think that's the sticky part, is like lean into the thing that you're so deeply interested in that you could talk about for hours and hours and hours. And that's where your magic lies. That's where, when I started last July, less than a year ago, and then grew to 50Ks, because I'm just talking about shit that's so interesting. And I'm kind of staying and working hard and being consistent within my specific passion. And that's where you really, like, it's exhausting to work in a service-based industry and business, especially when it's reliant on social.
Totally.
But it's also, I am so creatively fulfilled because every day I work doing, the thing that I am passionate about, the thing that I have an ounce of expertise in, with people that I truly love, and I get excited about their projects. So much so that I would do it for free, which has gotten me in trouble before.
Yep.
So I think that's the elevator piece of advice, is just lean into, like, make sure you're being introspective and like lean into that thing, because I think that's where your magic is. And as a personal brand, when you're kind of looking outside at everybody else, trying to figure out how you should position yourself, like kind of look internally and say, what is that thing that I can pull out and talk about forever?
Fuck yeah, dude. That's some really good elevator advice.
Elevator advice.
That is excellent.
God, that's my nightmare. That's actually nightmare of a social experiment.
Literally.
Oh, I'd do anything.
You have to give people unsolicited advice in an elevator for a whole day.
I'd jump out of the elevator, like right down the shaft, and just say,
this is where it is.
This is where it is.
I'm done. Tatum, thank you so much for doing this, for hanging out with me. And this has been incredible. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me at TATUM BRANDT on Instagram. Unfortunately, all those bios that say I'm cooler on TikTok, I'm actually cooler on Instagram, which is so cringy.
Nice.
And then my brand studio is BRANDT, BRANDT Creative. And you can find us at brandtcreative.co. If you want to work on some brand stuff or you want a free brand audit, like, come on over. We can do that.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm doing that brand audit.
Yeah.
With you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You kidding?
That'll be fun.
So everybody, TATUM BRANDT, thank you for making it this far. We're going to have her on again, almost certainly. Until next time.
Until next time.
Peace.